film opens with Lydia Dietz hosting her paranormal show, Ghost House, where she investigates haunted houses. During a taping, she's startled by what looks like Beetlejuice in the audience. After the show, she talks with her boyfriend and manager, Rory. Still shaken by Beetlejuice, she tries to take some calming pills, but he throws them away, saving two at her request. She receives a flurry of texts and calls from her stepmother, Delia, who is panicked over some bad news. Lydia visits her at her art gallery, who is now a renowned artist, delivers heartbreaking news. Lydia's father, Charles, has died. He had survived a plane crash into the ocean, but was later eaten by a shark. The two begin making plans to return to Winter River for his funeral. In the afterlife, Beetlejuice works with other shrunken-headed employees. A ghost janitor accidentally brings Dolores back to life, and she quickly reassembles her body with a stapler. Demanding to know where Beetlejuice is, she becomes angry when he can't answer and drains his soul, leaving him as an empty shell. Meanwhile, they go to find Lydia's daughter, Astrid, who faces bullying at school for being different and has a difficult relationship with her mother. She feels neglected, believing her mother spends more time with ghosts than with her. When they arrive at the school, she makes an extravagant announcement about her grandfather's death. Astrid is stunned by the news of his passing, but argues about their lack of discussion regarding the death of her own father, Richard, who drowned in a river. In Underworld, Beetlejuice is summoned by Wolf Jackson, a former actor who is now a ghost detective. He confronts him about Dolores' return, making him uneasy. He narrates that Dolores was his wife when he was alive, whom he met while grave robbing. After their marriage, she tricked him into ingesting poison, as she was the leader of a soul-sucking cult. Before dying, he dismembered her, knowing she would seek revenge. When Beetlejuice learns that Lydia is returning to Winter River, he sees it as his opportunity to escape. The Dietz women and Rory arrive in town, staying at Lydia's old home on the hill. After the funeral, he proposes to Lydia in front of everyone, despite her clear reluctance and Astrid's open disdain for him. She reluctantly agrees. Frustrated, Astrid goes for a bike ride but crashes through a fence and hits a tree, where she finds a boy named Jeremy Fraser in his treehouse. They bond as she tells him that Lydia is her mother. Back at the house, she explores the attic and discovers an old model of the town along with a pamphlet that tricks her into saying Beetlejuice's name. Lydia arrives just in time to stop her. However, when Rory shows up, he attempts to use his fake new wave methods to help her and inadvertently says the demon's name 3 times. This sends them into the town model, where she confronts him. Beetlejuice then frightens Rory with his nightmare face before Lydia manages to return them all home. Later, Astrid visits Jeremy's house and finds he has a handbook for the recently deceased, which he says he got at a yard sale. They plan to hang out at his house for Halloween the next night. Hours before the wedding, Astrid has Lydia drive her to Jeremy's house. In his room, they suddenly start floating. He reveals he is a ghost who died after falling from the treehouse and asks Astrid for help in coming back to life, promising she can see her father again. Meanwhile, Lydia speaks with a real estate agent who reveals that Jeremy's house hasn't sold because it's a murder house. She learns that Jeremy killed his parents 23 years ago and fell to his death before the police could arrest him. Realizing Astrid is in danger, she rushes back to his house. Meanwhile, they read an incantation from the handbook, opening a portal to the afterlife. Lydia arrives too late to stop her and, desperate to save her, summons Beetlejuice. He eagerly agrees to help but insists that she marry him to escape Dolores. Reluctantly, she agrees, and he opens the portal, using a shrunken head guy named Bob to take his place in case anyone comes looking for him. In the backyard, Delia performs a ritual to honor Charles using 2 asps she thinks are defanged. She quickly realizes her mistake when they bite her in the neck, causing her to collapse and die. Jeremy reveals that he tricked her into sacrificing her life for his. While he heads off to get his pass stamped, Astrid is left to board the soul train, but Richard spots her and gives chase. Lydia catches up just in time to stop her from getting on the train. As they escape through an emergency exit, they find themselves on one of Saturn's moons, where the sandworm emerges and chases after them. Meantime, Dolores continues her killing spree in the afterlife, having just sucked out another ghost's soul. She arrives at Beetlejuice's department only to find it empty. Meanwhile, Jackson interrogates Bob, who is dressed like Beetlejuice. Once he leaves, Dolores finds him and drains his soul. Lydia and Astrid reunite with Richard and share a brief moment before rushing to stop Jeremy from getting his pass stamped. They reach the window where he smugly gloats, believing they're too late. However, the ghost stamping the pass is actually Beetlejuice, and the stamp reads, "Shit out of luck." He pulls a lever, activating a trapdoor that sends Jeremy down to hell. Delia, who is dead now, finds herself in the afterlife's waiting room, struggling to accept her demise. Desperate, she calls upon Beetlejuice for help, and he eagerly agrees to assist her. After saying goodbye to Richard, Lydia and Astrid return to the living world, where she apologizes for her earlier behavior. Realizing the wedding is happening, Lydia decides to go through with it. When they arrive at the chapel, Beetlejuice appears with Delia to interrupt the ceremony. He injects Rory with a truth serum, forcing him to admit he always thought her paranormal abilities were nonsense and that he was only marrying her for her money. Beetlejuice then gives her a glove, enabling her to punch Rory across the room. He then attempts to force his wedding with Lydia by trapping the other guests inside their phones and warping their faces. He performs an over-the-top musical number, freezing Jackson and his ghost cops in place, but Dolores interrupts. Astrid grabs the handbook, searching for a loophole, and draws a door to Saturn's moon, summoning the sandworm. Beetlejuice narrowly avoids being eaten by guiding the sandworm toward Rory and Dolores instead. Just as he's about to finish the wedding, Astrid finds that the contract he forced Lydia to sign is null and void because he brought her into the afterlife while she was still alive. She then says his name 3 times, causing him to inflate and explode. Jackson unfreezes and informs them that he must take Delia back to the afterlife. She bids them farewell, promising to haunt them until she is ready to cross over, and they reaffirm their love for her. In the afterlife, she is happily reunited with Charles, or what remains of him that wasn't eaten. Later, Lydia films her final episode of Ghost House before retiring to spend more time with Astrid. They book a flight to Transylvania, where she is attracted to a boy dressed like Dracula. The scene shifts to their wedding, followed by her giving birth to a monstrous Beetlejuice baby that kills the doctors. Lydia wakes up, realizing it was a nightmare, only to find the demon next to her. She wakes up from the second nightmare as well, indicating she isn't quite rid of him yet.